Construction is done. The video is out. You've probably seen it already. And it's been very well received, and I appreciate all the kind comments. However, there has been a decent amount of questions in the comments of the construction video and on Instagram, and I thought I'd just make a video addressing all of the questions in one spot. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, I'm Cole Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by for another video. Testing out different shots here. It's gonna look different for every video here for a little while. So the first question that I'd like to address about the construction in the new room and tuning the room. So many people were asking if I was gonna do a turn-off system. Now, while I am very interested in what that would do for me here in this room, they're not inexpensive. And if I'm being completely honest, my bank account is tapped. The construction of this and the investment in Atmos, which is not yet installed, I'm gonna need to recover for a little while. So that's probably not, if anyone from Trinoff sees this and they would like to send one over for me to spend like a long-term test with, sure, I would love to test one out. However, it's not on the current roadmap. The room is like plus or minus like 3.5 dB. So it's super, super flat, and I'm super pumped about that. The next question, lots of people asking why I didn't soffit mount speakers. It's real simple. It's because there's only 2 inches of treatment on the front wall, and I would have had to lose lots and lots of floor space to frame out the front wall far enough in order to mount soffit mount speakers into the wall. I don't want to lose that much square footage on my floor. I also don't particularly love the soffit mount rooms that I've been in. I've probably worked in 12 or 15 different rooms that have soffit mount speakers, and not a single one of them have I left being like, that was incredible. I don't know if I just don't really like the sound of soffit mount speakers, or if I've just not heard the best implementation of them yet, but zero interest in soffit mounting, even if I had the floor space to give up. Now that brings me on to the next question. Is a lot of people were asking why only 2 inches on the side walls. It's a couple reasons, honestly. When I first built this room, I was under the impression that 2 inches was good enough, that I would probably need some bass traps in the future, but that 2 inches was a broad enough spectrum, and that was just good enough. Now, that does leave a little bit to be desired in the low end if you're only using 2-inch acoustic treatment. But the other issue is cost. It literally costs twice as much to go 4 inches as it does 2 inches. And even though you just saw me spend an astronomical amount of time and money on this room, I believe it, I am very like budget conscious of stuff, which is why I did it all myself. The other reason is the construction in this room with the angled walls gets significantly more complicated when I'm trying to put 4 inches on these angled walls and keep it up, because that starts to get heavy. And currently all I did on these angled walls was hold the insulation up there, the rigid board, the 8-pound Owens Corning 8-pound mineral wool, take some roofing nails and just put some roofing nails in it, and that held it just fine. As soon as we get to 4 inches, that technique doesn't work anymore. And I don't really know how I would keep that up on the walls without actually framing out the walls for 4 inches everywhere. The next question a lot of people had is if I was gonna put rugs back in here, if the room still needed a rug. Personally, I don't feel like it does. The room doesn't sound overly dead because there's a giant floor. I've got the window right in front of me with the stone on the front wall and this giant diffuser behind me. So this room doesn't feel overly dead. However, it does feel extremely well controlled, and there are no floor to ceiling reflections anymore at all, because we've got giant ceiling clouds everywhere covering nearly 100% of the flat ceiling. So if rugs come in here, it will be for the vibe of the room and definitely not for the sonic character of the room. Lots and lots of questions on the cost of this room. The full, like, truly honest answer is I don't know, because it's been done in so many stages. I'd have to go back and pull out my like tax records from 2019 when I first originally built this room, because even though I did just spend a ton of money for sure, a lot of the room was already here. I reused most of the fabric, a lot of the track, and a lot of the insulation was reused, and of course the original ceiling cloud. So I really don't know. I need to add it up. I may discuss that in a future video. Lots of people asking the dimensions of the room, which I didn't actually say in that video. This room is about 22 foot by 24 foot with almost 12 foot ceilings. It's like 11 foot 10-inch ceilings. So it's a pretty sizable room and big enough that I didn't lose any real usable space. A lot of questions on that. The back wall was only a foot thick, and then the corner traps, which I never really had stuff stacked in the corners anyway, so I don't feel like I lost really any usable floor space. Again, the whole back wall has been moved 1 foot in, but it really feels exactly the same size to me. Questions on the fabric color. Did I intentionally choose to keep the room entirely beige, or did I consider changing colors? And what's interesting about this is I heavily considered changing colors of the room. So much so that Gavin from Haverstick Designs, I actually asked him to work up some renders for me. I'll throw some screenshots up here. Because he worked up renders of the room after treatment, I was like, how much trouble is it for you to just render this room out in a handful of different colors? The fabric is all from Guilford of Maine, and it's all from the Anchorage collection. They only have, I don't know, 15 different colors. So Gavin rendered out 8 or 10 different colors for me for the room, and I really considered moving to white. But if I'm being honest, I didn't really like any of the other color options. I originally went with this color because it was the color that I disliked the least, that it would go with everything, no matter what. It went with the floor, it just worked. And the only other color, especially after seeing all the renders that I considered going with, was white. But I just felt like, especially for filming, that was just going to be way too contrasty in this room. And so that is part of the reason why I was so adamant about getting these soffit lights, getting the lighting right in this room on the remodel, is so that way there was more dynamics, and that way I could change the color of everything. Like the lights that are shining behind me on this diffuser, I can change them to literally any color of the rainbow I would like. And so that was like my compromise. I did consider changing colors of the room. It didn't feel like the right move, and I didn't like any of the other colors enough to go for that. But I did consider it, because it's like, if we're going this far, a color change would only be a little bit more expensive. So, but in the end, I like this. It looks good. I'm happy with it. A handful of questions on the fabric track and the fabric that went on the walls. I mentioned it towards the end of the build video, but I know that's a long video. 1 hour and 20 minutes. That was the biggest video I've ever put together. Also spanning the longest time of any video I've ever put together. The track was from Fabric Wall. It's fabric-wall.com. I'll put a link down below. They make a bunch of different orientations, sizes, and depths of track, and the tools were also from them. I also ordered the fabric from them, and again, it was Guilford of Maine is the name of the fabric. Speaking of links down below, before we get on to the rest of these questions, I do have links in the description of this video and every video for all of the gear that I use, and now a bunch of the construction of this studio. So anytime you guys need any piece of musical gear whatsoever, you can jump on any one of my videos and click on any one of the links in the description of any video. And when you do that, once you're on the site, you can purchase absolutely anything you were gonna buy anyway. Costs you nothing extra, but it goes a long ways to help support this channel, help me keep making content just like this. So thank you, Sweetwater, for sponsoring this video, and thanks to you guys for using the links in the description anytime you need to purchase anything. I very much appreciate it. Okay, back to the questions. Lots and lots and lots of questions on, is Atmos still going in? And yes, absolutely, Atmos is still going in. I kind of wanted to do this in stages, partially for my own mental state, if I'm being honest. This room has been shut down for 10 months. It had been shut down for 10 months. And I needed to work on something. I needed to mix some music. I needed to track some stuff for my own sanity. And so even though I'm super, super pumped to get Atmos in, I elected to make the room functional. And then I'm going to spend 2 or 3 weeks working here, getting used to the room, getting the flow of the room, and then I'm going to shut back down for about a week, and we're going to put Atmos in. The Atmos install should be significantly less invasive because really the only thing that is actually being mounted is mounting the speakers to the ceiling, front and rear. So absolutely still happening, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I needed a mental break before I got onto that. Lots of comments and questions on how did I learn how to do all of this. And there were even some people saying that there was a couple comments of this is the problem with YouTubers is they just make it look like everyone can do this. And I don't feel like I made it look like everyone could do that in that video. You certainly can if you want to. I have this problem where I think that if anyone is capable of doing something, I can also do it because they're not any smarter than me. Now that probably stems from kind of a cocky, arrogant place from my early 20s. I no longer actually think I'm as smart as everyone else. However, for most of my life, I've just been like, something needs done. If there's someone out there to hire to do it, I can figure it out. When it came to this acoustic stuff and monitor placement and tuning, this is definitely outside of my scope, and I really needed Gavin and Josh involved in this. I would not have gotten to this end result without them whatsoever. However, on the construction side of things, I don't know how much I saved, but I probably saved $30,000, I would guess, if I hired someone to do this, and then I don't think they would have done as good of a job as me because it's my place and I wanted it to be perfect. How I learned how to do this was just born out of necessity from being poor my entire life. I never had the money to hire somebody or to have somebody work on anything, my cars, or I grew up riding dirt bikes. I never had money to hire someone to work on my dirt bikes, so I had to learn how to do it. I learned how to rebuild motors and rebuild the carburetors myself by reading books. Way back in the day, 15 years ago, me and my wife bought a house to flip, and I had never done any construction ever. It was a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. It was a train wreck, and I tore the whole house down to the studs. And maybe I'll tell that story one day. But it was an absolute nightmare putting it back together, and I learned how to do every part of the process. I can solder plumbing. I know electrical inside and out. I know how to frame stuff. I know, you just got to do it. You got to make the mistakes, and you got to get yourself in some deep water that you probably had no business being in, and then you got to figure out how to climb your way out of it. And that's how you learn how to do this stuff. It is not easy, but yes, everyone can do it. If you own, a saw and a drill, then you could do everything that I did. It just might take you longer because maybe you haven't done it before. YouTube is a spectacular thing because you can literally YouTube anything. You can learn how to do absolutely anything on this platform. So yeah, we're all capable of this. There was quite a few questions and comments regarding speaker placement and how they determined where to put the speakers. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know. Gavin he measured the room with a laser, and he knew every single angle and every single dimension of the room. And I think he runs it through like an actual computer simulation that simulates the waveforms, the sound waves bouncing everywhere at all the different frequency points, and he chose the spots for the speakers, partially based on Atmos, because these speaker positions have to play nice with the Atmos rig. But he chose the speaker locations that were gonna be best for this whole rig, and that's some voodoo magic that I don't really understand. Everything that I just said about you can learn anything, the art and science of acoustics is a very, very, very deep rabbit hole, and I've got too much music to work on to fall down that rabbit hole to the point where I can do what Gavin can do. And also, Gavin's probably smarter than me. let's just be honest. Questions on room tuning and what calibration we did. And what's interesting, and I said this at the end of the video, but there is 0 EQ in the monitoring path. There's no room correction whatsoever. They just figured out exactly where to put the speakers and choose the crossover point for the subwoofers and place the subwoofers on the quarter wavelength of the room to cancel out. The subwoofers are somehow canceling out that quarter wavelength. That was the problem, the main problem with this room. And so it was purely the changes we made to the room acoustic treatment wise, speaker placement, subwoofer placement, and crossover frequency. That's it. 0 EQ. That's all there was. Quite a few questions about the window, actually. And does it mess with the acoustics of the room? And am I ever going to cover it up or replace it? The honest answer is yes, it does mess with the acoustics of the room. Everything is a compromise. And for me, when I was building this house around this studio originally, I knew that the window being placed right there, that's not the best move for acoustics, and I don't care. I'm happy to give up what problems that window creates, which are very, very minor, in order to look out a window that's huge all day, every day. My mental health and my sanity in this room and my stamina, the amount of hours that I can sit in the hot seat and work is like I can work twice as long without fatigue just because I have natural light and I'm looking out, and instead of staring at a computer monitor right here the whole time, I can see this beautiful tree line that's, I don't know, 150, 200 yards away. And it's well worth it to me. So does the window cause issues? Yes. I'm still okay with it. Now, from a soundproofing perspective, because there are some comments on that as well, this house is at the end of a very quiet cul-de-sac. 10 cars, 15 cars a day drive past the front of my house throughout the course of an entire day. And I have occasionally, if my next door neighbor is mowing his grass, I can hear it, but it doesn't stop me from mixing. It would only stop me from doing very soft vocals or only stop me from doing very soft finger picking acoustic guitar. And I've never been in a session where that happened yet. So when we built this house, I decided to go with just the regular window, leave the window there, and then I knew that I'd have the option to replace it with a soundproof one if it became an issue. It's not been an issue. So it's plenty good enough for me in my situation. Definitely a handful of questions about how I laid in the insulation and the insulation behind this diffuser. Now, as you saw in this back wall, I stacked all of the insulation vertically. So it was all running like this vertically in the wall. And in the front corner traps, I did exactly the opposite. It's all stacked horizontally. And in the front soffit trap, it's stacked horizontally. People were asking the differences. I contacted Gavin before doing this because just from a pure workflow perspective, it was easier to mix and match vertical and horizontal in order to figure out, in order to shove it in the spaces. Gavin said he didn't think it made a difference enough to pay any attention to. He didn't say it didn't make no difference, but he said it wasn't a big enough difference to matter. And I believe him. If anything, stacking the insulation vertically will fight the fact that it may set. There's my alarm. It's real early in the morning. It may help fight the fact that the insulation may settle over time. When it's stacked vertically, it's not going to settle if it's vertical. So it makes no difference, and it was purely about what was going to be easier to get the insulation in the frames. Now, as far as why there's insulation behind this diffuser, it's because low end still travels through all of that stuff. Low end, the only way to stop low end is with mass. And so because the low end is still going, 20 hertz is going right through that diffuser and right through that plywood on the back side of the diffuser. So the fact that there's full of insulation behind this diffuser, it just helps with the bass trapping because there's a significant amount to gain by putting insulation behind the diffuser. Handful of questions about why there were 2 subs, and I thought I made it clear in the video, but maybe I didn't. When we tried just one sub, it didn't fully cancel out that quarter wavelength cancellation in the room. Something about running 2 subs and the way that they come together at the listening position totally cancels it out, which is, again, that's some black magic voodoo nonsense that I don't understand. Thank you guys so much for all of the kind comments and all the kind words and watching the video. And it was the most difficult video I've ever put together in my life. And this project, aside from that house remodel, this was the most difficult project I've done in my life. And so I appreciate all of the feedback. You guys are awesome, and your responses to it all have been awesome. And I just really appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being followers. Thank you for hitting the links in the description anytime you need to purchase anything. You guys rock. I appreciate it. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.